Cameras rolling. Stand by. Action.
Sean right here with We Are Change, interviewing
David Crowley, Danny Mason.
What are you guys doing here?
Shooting a movie. Yes,
we are.
you're the director.
The director of Gray State, which would be a political post-apocalyptic film about the state of the world.
Any more detail about that?
Not at this time.
All right. Well,
look out
have to
your
wait for the
window.
film, right?
Wait for the movie.
Absolutely coming out. It's projected
Next year sometime.
next
Just
year
in time.
But you know what? The part is through the efforts of people like We Are Change that are going out confronting these politicians and these dirty bastards. These guys have come up with an idea to help expose what's going to happen if we don't stand up and make change, right?
More or less.
It's one way to
That's
play.
elegant.
Well, what
Yeah.
inspired you guys to do this then?
At some point you take that breath and you look out your window and you just wonder. You find the answers for yourself, and you can't turn back from that, basically. So you find that answer for yourself, and then you got to do something about it, one way or the other.
So felt compelled to do it, and all the info out there, and
There's overwhelming evidence that everybody should be alert and aware about something going on and at least have some concern, correct?
It's also an overwhelming crowd of people who are willing to ignore it.
That's correct. And I think they're all brainwashed by the mainstream.
Brainwashed by something. I mean, it's not like their fault.
it's been properly executed by the elite.
Highly orchestrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it'd take an endless amount of money to orchestrate something like this. And you think the bankers are right behind it all?
Yeah.
Who else could possibly fund that, right?
I would say strongly yes, to be able to.
Well, we make the
finance
mistake of assuming our human experience is shared by the rest of the world and the rest of history, and that's just not true. The whole money system, which is controlled by the bankers, obviously, is not the natural state of affairs for the human experience. So, the second we step away from that, we have more things to look forward to than tomorrow's latte.
That's absolutely right. Anything else you'd like for people to know about what you guys are doing or anything else?
Facebook.com/Gray State Movie. Stay tuned. It's coming.
All right.
Absolutely.
Techstuff.com.
Is the Gray State real? Absolutely, it's real. We see it every day. We see it in the news. We see it on headlines, but people still don't acknowledge it. People don't want to recognize that it's actually here.
When it comes down to it, Gray State is about reality. There's your day-to-day reality that you concern yourself with, and then there's a reality that takes place just off the sidelines. The real conflict of Gray State revolves around breaching that veil.
Martial law, the stripping of your rights, your liberties, your freedom, encroaching on private property, even your free will. That is the Gray State.
All right, that's enough of that. It's so interesting to hear these guys, Sean Wright and Danny August Mason, talking about this stuff. Even 9 years later, here we are. And yeah, it's pretty interesting with these guys. But I believe Catherine Michelle is going to be joining me here soon. And if anyone else would like to join me, please let me know. I'll drop the link here. Just doing a short video, as we always say. We know how that goes, about all of this stuff. To remind people of this very tragic case, one of the strangest cases I've ever seen, and one of the biggest unsolved mysteries. So this is really very interesting stuff. Hey Ellie, how are you, my friend? Nice to see you. And Muzzle Flash, how you doing? Yeah, so 9 years later, and just when you think, just when I think got everything covered, we've looked at everything, we can't exhaust any more resources, there's really nothing more to talk about with this case, you begin to realize that there are a lot of people who still have never heard about the David Crowley case, or there are a lot of people who are very angry that people are even questioning David's death. And there are a lot of people that are angry too that David was framed, that David was accused of a double murder suicide within less than 24 hours at the max, really. And the police just ran with that theory and have been doing everything that they possibly could since that point to to accuse David and to say that nobody else did this. But as we've been covering for 9 years, just about since days after, there is no evidence that shows David Crowley is guilty. So that's the main thing that I wanted to say here. And people have heard me say it, and you're going to continue to hear us say it. In February, Dan Hinnon and I are going to get back into the Gray Stage podcast, and we're going to wrap up that series, the Gray Stage podcast series. And so what I thought I'd do right now, especially while I'm waiting for Catherine, it's a lot of videos I could play. I figured I'd read through some of the end of my book, The Gray Stage, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. So this is the end of my book. Thank you, Muzzle Flash. I really appreciate that, and appreciate all the people who are introducing this case, maybe to the first time, actually. And we need more people to just talk about this case, and we need people to continue to talk about this case. And we have some very, very strong people who are just informing new people all the time. So, yeah, definitely, Ellie. Let me know what that is, because as people may know or may not know, there is going to be more to this case, and so we're hoping to get more stuff on. Yeah, I love Catherine too. I told her that I was going to come here on at 8, and my plans changed, so she may not be on for a little while, but I'll definitely stay on for as long as I can to make sure she can get on here too. I'm sure she has some things to say, some things to cover, and if anybody wants to drop a line in the chat, I will try to put that up here. And again, if there's anyone who does want to join in this call too, still waiting for that debate with Danny August Mason, and hopefully one day that will come around. But what we're looking at here is the pretty much the end of the book, The Gray Stage here. So I figured I'd just read some of this until Catherine comes in and joins us. And this is how I decided to end the book, The Gray Stage. And yes, there is some talk about a second book that may be in the works. And then we'll play some more videos here too. So here we go. The Gray Stage only exists because of the official conclusion of the Apple Valley Police Department. With the conclusion of the review of digital devices, Detective Brian Bone reported on October 7, 2015, there is no other information available for further investigation. Throughout this investigation, the AVPD has not discovered any information or evidence that shows anybody but David is the perpetrator of these crimes, including the killing of his wife, child, and himself. So this book is a direct response to the allegations against David Crowley. Either the Apple Valley Police Department should be forced to prove David Crowley guilty, or they should publicly admit the case is unsolved. And it is unsolved. Because the official investigation failed to prove David Crowley guilty, I can only assume he is not. What other conclusion could I possibly reach under the current circumstances? Time and time again, we are asked to believe David is guilty simply because the official narrative declares it so. We wait and wait and wait for evidence of David's guilt, but such evidence is never produced. Delay after delay did not deter my efforts to find evidence of the allegations against David. Like I said, to find evidence of the allegations against David, not necessarily looking at what proves him innocent, but looking at what proves David Crowley guilty. And by that, all we found was that David Crowley is innocent. During the official investigation, I waited patiently for a conclusion based on facts. I researched as much as I could, documenting comments and actions of those involved in this tragedy. I soon realized what the official theory believers and myself had in common. None of us were able to prove David guilty. In fact, no human being on earth can prove David is guilty of a double murder suicide. So why should we act like David has been proven guilty? In the United States of America, we are all innocent until proven guilty. At least that is the America I strive to live in and help keep alive. I have yet to find anyone who can prove David guilty, starting and ending with the investigative bodies who created the official theory and subsequent conclusion. At the very latest, the official theory began with Apple Valley Police Department's press release on January 18, 2015 at 11:40 a.m., which was 10 minutes before David's body was examined and days before the bodies were positively identified by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office. The press release claimed what happened at 1051 Ramsdale Drive was, quote, the result of an apparent murder-suicide, end quote. Once the official theory began, investigating officials may have found it unnecessary to investigate any possible alternative theories. As the investigation progressed, it was clear authorities could not find a motive as to why David would kill his wife and child before committing suicide. Additionally, authorities failed to tie David to the 3 questionable writings inside the Crowley home: the blood writing on the living room wall, the digital note on the kitchen island laptop, and the written note on a notepad in the office bedroom. Requests for handwriting comparisons were deemed unnecessary, yet all 3 writings were allegedly linked to David. Based on what evidence? David's blood was found on the trigger and magazine, but not on any bullets recovered. Even worse, authorities left the crime scene with 6 bullet casings and 4 spent bullets. Apparently, not one single person inside the Crowley house on January 17th or 18th saw the bullet hole in the living room ceiling, which led to the bullet labeled as item 57 in the attic. The same is true of item 53, which is the bullet that rolled out of the living room carpet on January 20th. DNA results for both bullets were highly disturbing. 2 or more DNA profiles were found on item 53. The blood on the bullet matched Rania, but not David or Kamel. The source of the other DNA profile or profiles remains unknown. That is a very big thing. The bullet that is tied to Rania had 2 or more DNA profiles. One was Rania, and they were able to rule out David and Kamel. So whose other DNA was on the bullet that killed Rania? The bullet found a month later on February 18th, item 57, matched David's DNA, but blood was not present on the spent round. Authorities did not know about item 53 or item 57 because they were not looking for them. Then there are the missing body parts: David's right hand, both of Kamel's hands, and Rania's entire right arm were reportedly missing. Most of the heads of David and Kamel were also missing. Paleo, the family dog, is credited with the missing body parts and apparently Rania's fractured rib. Yet there is no indication Paleo deserves credit since dog feces tests were never conducted. Surprisingly, one of the biggest blood stains in the living room was never tested for DNA. A large circular blood stain was found on the lower right corner of a recliner in the living room. The blood was swabbed and labeled as item 34, but never tested for DNA results. This blood stain is the main reason why I believe at least one of the bodies was moved between the time of death and when investigators entered 1051 Ramsdale Drive on January 17, 2015. Plain and simple, this was a staged event. Some believe David staged it, while others believe the scene was staged by parties other than David Crowley. Either way, I believe this was a staged event. I believe David has been falsely accused, and unless authorities can prove the double murder suicide theory, this case should be reopened and the status should be changed from exceptionally cleared to unsolved. All right. Perfect timing there, as we now have Catherine joining us.
I'm sorry I'm late. I was watching a YouTube video.
You're early. I was telling everybody I was planning on coming here at 8 p.m. It's 7 p.m. Things worked out pretty well, so I figured I'm going to jump at the chance here to just jump on, and thank you very much for joining me. Muzzle Flash says Apple Valley Police Department deliberately botched this entire case. The question remains why. It's a pretty good question. Say hi to Rick too. Thanks for joining us, Rick. They're in Canada. It's probably really late or really early, depending on the time zone. And Catherine, we definitely want to hear from you.
Uh-oh.
You probably have the most recent video specifically just related to this case. You look out there, you may find some other videos. I haven't really found any, unless they're new hit pieces that all want to talk about the same film and spread the same lies. And I believe a lot of it is just laziness, just being very lazy, because they just don't want to spend the time. They want to act like they're investigators, like they investigate all these cases. But this case could be a litmus test, possibly, for people to say, okay, because we have so many documents, we got so much stuff here, and if you want to really investigate something, this seems like a really good case to start out with. I don't know if colleges, even high schools, people who want to go into detective work, to forensics, to whatever, there's a lot of areas where this case, if put in the right format, hint, hint, could be a good course, a good college course, a good high school course. But you have done the most recent video specifically related to David Crowley. And what are your thoughts 9 years later?
Oh, boy. First of all, let me say hi to everyone. Hi, Muzzle. Hi, Ellie. Hi, Rick. And I'm not sure who else is in the chat, but hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining, Greg. And thank you, Greg, for allowing me and inviting me on here tonight. Oh, hi of the Rise of the New World Order. How are you? I am so conflicted with everything that I have found in this case. My most recent videos cover the tattoos and how, in my opinion, and I've had some really interesting conversations offline with a couple of people regarding this, and they have the exact opposite view. They think that they do match. And anyway, I mean, and these aren't people, as far as I know, that have been following the case and have joined us a lot of times. So to me, they're new eyes, which gives me some hope. But, when I look at the things that I found, like the bore patch that was left inside the gun, I don't care what nobody can convince me that David himself did that. That man knew his weapon inside and out and would not clean it. And a bore patch is a small piece of material, for those who don't know, material or cotton that's used to clean inside the weapon, inside the barrel. And to have that found when they're taking apart the weapon and securing it, but yet they don't mention it. There's only 2 places in the report that I found it. That right there, I mean, I should just say, there are so many things in this case that point to anyone other than David doing this. And, 9 years later, I thought I was convinced when I first read the autopsy reports, but right now it's like there's just no way anybody could, even partially swayed me to think he was guilty. It was like someone, I think it was Muzzle, that said that it was botched, and it was done on purpose. the complete, in my opinion, completely messed up and screwed up and twisted and reworded. But at the same time, I don't think every officer was in on what was supposed to happen, because it was due to some of the different officers' reports. I think the ones that weren't in on the cover up, that, they were the ones who wrote the different reports, the more thorough reports, or they included things, like the Boer patch. And, their innocence in all of this, I really honestly believe is what helped us, all of us who have been looking into this, be able to prove David's innocence.
And the rise of the New World Order. This is Eric Spitfire Wilkinson. He did want to thank you for this as well.
Oh, that's so sweet. I mean, I just did a little bit of money. I mean, everybody else had already donated. I just didn't see it. And I just happened to log on to Facebook and I saw it. Otherwise, I would have donated sooner. I'm sorry.
That's very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and I haven't really been on Facebook. I don't know if people have noticed.
It's
But I have been.
Sophia.
Hey,
Let's say
Sophia,
hi
how
to
are you?
Sophia.
And Crip Rick and Eric too. But yeah, one of the best things that I've done is actually taken myself off of Facebook for a while, and I really needed it.
Oh, you're smart. I've done that a few times myself, and it was so funny because I have to blame. I'm going to take this moment to throw you and Dan under the bus. It's you guys' fault that I even have friends on Facebook, because before, when I was on Facebook, back in the day where you just accept everybody, right? Everybody, if you have less than 1,000 friends, you're just nobody. And so I'd had it. I just got rid of everything, got rid of that page. And then I went back on just to see some pictures from my family. And they're like, well, you have to go on Facebook to see it. So I created a page. And then that's when I found this case. And then I think it was you and Dan, or somebody was giving you and Dan a hard time about, oh, they're not real. They don't have anybody. They're this, they're that. So I'm like, well, I don't want people to think I'm fake. So I started accepting, now it's ridiculous. So it's all your fault.
They're not real. Yeah, they're all bots.
I know, that's what people were saying. Oh, you're fake. If you don't have 200 friends in your list, you're just, some troll. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so over that stuff. But it's like, well, okay.
I thought it's kind of the other way around. If you have too many people, that's when I would think you're a bot, or you're paying for for friends or something. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. So in this, are you where are you at on this case? Because I'm kind of like I pretty much took a break, and usually around the winter time, I just kind of chill out a little bit. Even last year, I had pre-recorded a lot of the podcasts, and we haven't done a podcast since I think May. So I just, with everything going on, a lot of personal family stuff, I kind of checked out. And so where are you at on this case right now?
Ever since I found for me, the tattoos, I'm no longer convinced it's them on the floor. Not to say I'm right. I have to preface this. I'm not saying that my view on that is right at all, because I'm still trying to figure it all out. But that put a huge twist in the case for me. So since I don't know, and those tattoos do not match, in my opinion, especially Kamel's don't match. Is it David really on the floor and Kamel and Rania, and then Kamel's not really dead? I don't know. And so when that came out, and then I did the video talking about, the other things that I found, again, not everything that I found that's in the reports. I mean, it is so blatantly obvious that this case was such an attempted cover-up that I don't know what to do. I'm just completely confused. So then what I did, like you, when you took a break and Sophia had worked so hard, she was doing a lot of some of the research for some of the earlier videos we were doing for me at the time. So she got burnt out, you were burnt out, and then I'm trying to get this other stuff out. And then I'm like, I've been, okay, I also write, and has nothing to do with the case. My first book was published, well, my only book was published eons ago, back in early 2001. And so I took obviously a really long break, and I had a whole bunch of books that I had actually started. And then I just said, you know what, to take a break from this case to give me time to think, I finished one novel, and now 3/4 of the way through a second novel. And then I did the NaNoWriMo for NaNoWriMo for November. And so since I started that, I really need to finish it. And, working with, beta readers, and then the person who's doing the cover art for me. So that's really taken up a lot of my time now. But when Stephen today started commenting on your post, Greg, actually, I think it was your post. I can't remember. Oh my God, it's old age. Please, people, forgive me. But, where we really need to get back to it. And it kind of is starting to light that spark again. There's that little ember that's starting to burn into a flame again. So and when you said you wanted to do a live tonight, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's get this back out there, because it's gone by the wayside. People really, it seems like most people don't care anymore. And I'm not talking about our core group here, the people that always show up. These people are dedicated and they're there. But I'm talking about society as a whole. When people were stuck inside during the lockdowns, and that kind of thing, they got bored and they were looking for stuff. And so I think it was titillating, and they, jumped on board for something to do. But now that they're out doing their life, they've kind of forgotten. And this family is now falling between the cracks. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want all of our hard work. We've worked so hard for so long to just go away.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you think David died first?
The person that is labeled as David in the reports, I'll go with that, definitely died first. There's no question whatsoever. And the autopsies prove that by the state of decomp. There's zero question. And again, this is what I'm saying. It's like they were trying to do a narrative, but not everybody was clearly on board with their thought process. Things slipped through, and we caught it.
Any thoughts on who might have died second, or is that kind of up in the air?
I really think that probably Rania. I think that the order was David, Rania, Kamel. Because when you look at again the autopsies, Rania has some mold growing, which takes a little bit longer, and it's not by much. It's not like days went by, but Kamel didn't have that at all. And so she just, simply was there. So I do honestly believe by the medical examiner's reports, it was David, Rania, Kamel.
Very interesting. See, David is a combat veteran. They had to kill him before he defended himself, and that would make sense why they had to get him first. Why would it? Well, authorities would have to say he died last, obviously, because they're accusing him of this, which really never makes sense. You look at the crime scene, you look at just everything that they found, not only that day, but everything afterwards. I don't understand. I don't understand how they could quickly come to say that, David did this without a suicide note, without anything. It's just very, very odd to me. It's a very strange case. And the same way that, you see the people who want to believe David Crowley did this, they just jump at that and get very, very angry. And of course, we received many phone calls from people who were trying to steer everybody into the right way. People like Sean Wright, people, all of these gray state goons, they were trying to steer people to just accept that David Crowley is guilty. And they were smart about it in the way that they just want everyone to stay silent and to not say anything. And let's just wait. Let's hold off until the investigation is done. But at the same time, they weren't doing that. So they wanted people to stay silent while they just controlled the narrative. Very, very strange to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only.
And, you know, after the last video I did too, I had someone contact me who had once worked with Danny. And I'm really grateful to this person. I don't know if they're even going to listen to the video or not. But if they do, they let me know that I had been pronouncing Danny's middle name wrong, which is great because I hate pronouncing names wrong. So I've been calling him Danny August Mason. And he says, no, his name is Danny August Mason. So I'm going to try really hard to remember that and always call him by his correct name. But thank you to out there for setting me straight on the right name. But, you know, it seems like when we start to pull back, there's always somebody who has a connection that pops up and, you know, starts asking questions. So I've always wondered, well, you know, am I supposed to quit, or does this mean we're supposed to keep going?
Yep. Yeah, I've just kind of always felt it in my heart to kind of just keep going. And I wouldn't say that I burnt out on the case, but I would say that there were just other things that I, you know, had to focus on. And then of course I'm also writing a nonfiction book, so I'm following a very specific, you know, thing happening in our country right now that I do wonder how David would feel if he were to be here and to be involved in what is happening with our country. What side would he stand on? Where would he be at? Would he be for violence during this age, during everything we've seen? Would he be for peace? You know, how would he feel about COVID? How would he feel about the riots, the protests, all of that? Because at first glance, watching David Crowley's 2012 trailer, it kind of seems like he's on the side of the rioters. And that's just my, it's not my opinion now, but that was my opinion then at first glance. And I think that was wrong. It's just that the film was, the trailer was done so well that the way that I had been, not raised, but my side changed because I was on that side. I was on the protest side. So I was seeing it as a glamorous version of a protest. And the worst possible case that a good protester could do is turn violent. And that's all that I saw was these protesters who were turning violent, these cops who were dressed in black, not dressed in blue. It's not the boys in blue. They're dressed in black, dressed like not even army, almost like stormtroopers, you know. And so I had a very difficult time with that project. So I do wonder what David Crowley's thoughts would be at this point here, where we are today. You know, who knows? He was a Ron Paul guy, libertarian. So
yeah, and it's so interesting how he hit the nail on the head with so many of those points. You know, when he was in his trailer where the woman's walking into the store and the shelves are empty and people that can't buy anything if they don't have a certain mark on their arm. A lot of this happened in a lot of different places. If you didn't have a card proving that you had, you know what, I don't want this video taken down, then you couldn't go shopping. And due to all of the logistics of getting items to grocery stores, a lot of times shelves were empty. So to me, I find that extremely prophetic that he not only wrote that, filmed it, but then guess what? It happened. So
yeah,
to me, that was interesting.
Yeah, there's some very interesting things, especially in the scripts too. And I hope everyone has read David Crowley's 2013 script and 2014 script, and you can compare the differences of how different those two scripts are. One includes Danny Auguste Mason's character, and the other doesn't. And when I learned that, that was very interesting to me. Why was Danny August Mason's character taken out of the script at the same time where he and David there's like some weird legal issue going on where David's trying to get Danny to sign papers, and they're going back and forth, and Mason is stalling and everything. And to see all of these people that David was distancing himself from all come out and basically say that David did this, how would they know that? How would they know that? Why would they say that so early on? And who made these guys the ambassador for the David is Guilty Club? I mean, how shameful do you have to be to do that? You didn't see Mitch Heil out there. You didn't see some other people out there. They shared their thoughts. They shared their views, but they weren't out there doing a freaking world tour to try to convince people that David Crowley was guilty. I mean, the actions speak for themselves, I guess.
And this is something that I just can't seem to get enough people to grasp and to understand. As a writer, I guess I know a little bit more about the ins and outs, where Danny kept trying to say that he was entitled, I get this, I get that, I should have this, I wrote this, all because he participated in the trailer and he may have had a suggestion here or there when they were out there filming. That does not make you a co-writer. It doesn't make you owner. You don't get copyright. It's, as a writer, we get together either with one-on-one with somebody we know, or you get together with writing groups, or even an agent can say, you know what, this section doesn't work, or we want to see this character go from here to here. Now make that happen. And when you take that suggestion and you now change your work, that person now does not become co-owner, doesn't become copyright holder. They have no say in it. The exact writing belongs to the writer. And that's where David was. David did all of the writing. And when he'd had enough, because Danny kept trying to put his fingers into the pot, and he didn't deserve it. Now, I'm not saying he didn't work hard on the trailer, and I'm not saying he wasn't in there acting his best, but he has zero right to copyright. Zero. None. And it irks me so much. I am irked that he would even, try to attempt to gain copyright over this when it was clearly David's writing. And I am thinking, again, just a thought, tossing it out there, that David wrote him out because he'd had enough. He's like, you know what? If his character's gone and I completely rewrite this, he can't even begin to dream to come back and say he's going to try to fight for copyright. Unfortunately, he still is trying, but even by removing him, he still is trying to say that he gets that, and that Gray State was his, part his, and it's not. It was purely David. And I don't know. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he wrote out that character, at least at the beginning. Who knows, he could have brought him back later, right, if he had gone to Hollywood and they did the series, but at that point, to get rid of it so it's no longer even an issue, it was a nothing burger.
Yeah, and that was interesting to see how all of that played out. And then it was, I believe it was 2017, maybe. Yeah, 2017, 2018, where Danny Mason actually came into the group, into the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group, and wanted to challenge myself and Dan Hennon to a debate. Well, I accepted, and that is still a open challenge. Anytime Danny Mason wants to debate, we will make that happen. We will definitely make that happen. And it won't be easy. It won't be hard. It won't be easy on him. It won't be hard on me.
Right.
But I think it could be good. It could be good because a lot of people don't hear that much from him. All they hear is David is guilty and he doesn't really talk about it, and that's it. But what I'll do is bring the facts of this case based on what the documents say. And what I'd like to know is if Danny Mason has even read these documents.
I don't
has he
think
even read them.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and it's interesting too because he's trying so hard to convince the world that David, did this horrible deed to his wife and daughter, and there is zero history of David showing violence toward women. And yet Danny, who has been very successful at cleaning out and scrubbing the internet of his arrests, but if you know how to look, you can find it. I know of twice where he was arrested and put in jail for domestic violence toward a family member, is how they word it. And I'm like, okay, so you have, and he's not the only one of the guys, right? There are others in that group that are just as guilty of domestic violence. And so you have these men with this history of violence toward women who were angry at the family, jealous of Kamel. And then you have David, who had zero history, and for all intents and purposes, everybody knew he loved his wife and child. And yet they're taking the guy who never had a history of hurting females, comparing that with the guys who had nothing but history of hurting females, and saying the guy who didn't have a history was the guilty party. When these other guys had, one was looking at jail time for, tax evasion, and the other one was trying to get his hands on what he felt was his fair share of a $30 million deal. Now, and again, we've said this a million times, but to set the record straight, we're not saying David was getting 30 million. It was funded for 30 million. And so for some reason, Danny's just like, oh, I get 10% no matter what. Dude, David wasn't even going to get 10%. I'll tell you that right now. You don't. And so that's the funny part.
So it's money. It came down to money, to the ownership, and it's crazy. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, David's dead. Mm-hmm. Not just him. Not like he died in a car accident or was shot by some random person while he's out on the street or something like that. This was a coordinated thing. And how coordinated and how sick and how evil would people have to be to actually pull something like this off, to kill him, to kill his wife and his daughter in this manner, in this crime scene. This is not just a random thing. I mean, it has to be so coordinated, so deeply and well planned, with so much confidence that they could do this. Mm-hmm. But yet there's so much that does not make sense at that crime scene. And my question has always been, were these things purposely left there as rabbit holes, as false leads, trails, red herrings, or was, and so that's been the other thing, because it's not, I mean, Steven Sanzeri will say this all the time, it's not like a perfect hit. When you think it's a government hit, if it was a government hit, it would probably be a lot cleaner.
Yeah. So. I would have thought so, and I mean, it's sloppy. I mean, all the way through it, it's like one of the worst things I've seen or I've read. I've been, researching these cases since, oh my gosh, the 1990s, early 1990s. I've read a lot of cases, and now this is by far the worst ever, and to have David's autopsy, where his decomp rate is at marked, which means it's more advanced. It's very noticeable. He's at marked autolysis. And you have Kamel and Rania at just autolysis. So they're basically it's just the beginning stages of the body breaking down. And David's, marked, meaning about 75% of the cells are now, breaking down. And theirs were probably somewhere between 25 to 50%. That's still a pretty huge difference. And so it's by several hours to a day, I would put that, 10, 12 hours to a day where he died. David died first. And that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's sloppy. If they were setting this up to make it look like he did it, what were they thinking?
Is it possible that they were all shot at the same time, but you know how sometimes one person lives a little bit longer than the other?
Not with the head wounds. Yeah, those were life ending the moment they entered. So,
If they entered at the same time, right?
well, roughly within minutes or seconds of each other, yeah, they were all that was it. And too, when you look at the multiple blunt force trauma in that skull piece, those could have been life-ending. A few of those blows were so deep in the indents, you could see indentations pretty good, that those could have also have been life-ending, but we don't know. We can only go by what the reports say. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have the neighbors too, right? Who only hear one neighbor who hears three rapid gunfire shots. And yet, there's no one. The official statement is that nobody was shot three times, but that's very, very close.
Well, and then not only that, the timing is completely wrong, which is why I think they never really followed through with that, because it would be so easy to poke holes in that entire theory, because the neighbors said somewhere between the 9th and the 10th or something like that. It was like way outside the range. And yet the decomposition as written in the autopsy reports, and that's what I'm going by, decomp in the autopsy reports, they were killed sometime in the early week and a half of January. So it's almost an entire month later from when those 3 gunshots were heard. An entire month goes by.
Well, I think it was the neighbor right next door, not the Prochnows, but the other neighbor who said that he didn't know when, but he heard rapid gunfire shots sometime between Christmas Eve and New Year's or something.
And that one, though, they couldn't even say where they were coming from for sure. So, it could have been somebody down the road.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens there, but here in Colorado, it's just really funny for being run by Democrats. There are a lot of people who shoot guns here. It's hilarious. So on, holidays.
There's so many Democrats.
Yeah. But they're shooting guns. Trust me.
I don't know if it's a Democrat shooting guns. That's what I'm saying.
So on holidays, they'll be outside, which is against the law, by the way, to be shooting your weapon, discharging it in city limits, but they do it anyway. So a lot of times, and so it's so funny because the police are always like, if you hear it, make sure you call it in. And it's like, dude, man, we'd be calling you every day. Forget it. Just don't report it.
Right. No, and sometimes, especially because I think the neighbor lived in a two-floor house too. So sometimes you hear things that sound like they're coming from one area and they're actually coming from the opposite. Mm-hmm. That's been known to happen too. So, but it's a very, very strange thing, a very strange case. And the fact that these houses are pretty close to each other. One thing that always kind of stuck out to me, and these are small things, right? The things I'm usually talking about are kind of just like, what? Wait a minute. Okay. There was the gate, right? They kept talking about this gate, but when I looked at the photos and looked at the videos, I didn't see a gate around the Crowley home. So I'd always wondered that, but it's mentioned in the police report. It's mentioned about this gate. And I'm like, what is this gate that they're talking about? That was one thing. And there were so many other things that just kind of, just another thing to just say, oh, this is just another strange thing that they would say or do. But when you just focus on what the police say, what the reports say, when you just focus there, I mean, you find all of these strange things. Some can be explained, but a lot of them, they just can't. And the more deeper you dig into it, the more that you see that, and the more knowledge you have, and the more you talk with people that have knowledge in, autopsies, in bodies, in ballistics, and in handwriting and crime scene, things like that. The more you talk with them in digital forensics, it's just they're baffled by it. They're baffled by this. They're baffled by it. It's just a very, very strange case, and I can see why some people want to make sure that the general population does not continue to talk about this case.
Yeah, and now that you're bringing up the ballistics, which is another like major key point in this case, because when you're reading through the reports, it states when they're doing the test fire from David's weapon, they did 4 test fires, T1, T2, T3, and T4, and they were saying that it had poor reproducibility in trying to get matches between the test fires. And so if they can't match test fires to the weapon, how are they matching the bullets that are simply fragments to the weapon? And then they, like you were the one who pointed out too, where they were comparing 57 to 31. And then that's how they determined 57 came from the gun, because it matched 31, which they said came from the weapon, but 31's this little teeny tiny fragment. And it's like, really? Okay.
Yeah. Strange. Very odd. Well, hopefully you can hang on here. I'm just gonna go away for about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm gonna play some more of this, and I will be right back, and we will continue on.
And yes, it is real. And yes, it is here.
Most of the films are, entertainment, and I think this goes beyond entertainment to really have a message. And most of the films that I've probably worked in here in the Twin Cities have not taken that next step.
I think that among the innumerable projects I've done, Gray State definitely stands out like a beacon as a unique project as a whole itself.
It kind of fits in perfect timing-wise of what's going on with the government, even the police forces, or different things like that. You couldn't ask for better film to come out now.
At first I thought it was kind of cool because there was a lot of action going on. But as I heard a little bit about the concept, it became a little eerie.
The ideas that they're dealing with in Gray State are definitely very frightening. If it is true, that's frightening in and of itself, but almost what's more frightening is not knowing whether it's true or not.
The idea of Gray State scares me. As I watch the occupation movements, the protests in the Middle East, the financial fights in Europe that are going on right now, I do have fear. I do have fear about what the future holds.
Something of this magnitude has never really been done in the Twin Cities film community, I think, just from my years being here. I think it's never been done because I don't think people have ever tried to envision of doing something like this before, as in like a dark, character-driven piece with a compelling story, but yet intense military action. A lot of people don't have that experience, and what David and Mitch have brought to the table has helped them achieve this dream and this realization, but also in the mindset of saying, "F it, why hasn't this been done?"
I didn't really know that it was going to turn out to be this epic story about, a country gone wrong. I've always joked that they're producing a docudrama. Hopefully it doesn't quite turn into a documentary.
Well, it's certainly not a documentary by strict definition. Is it something that can happen? I'd say absolutely it can happen. And in fact, I'd say that history has shown us that it has happened more than once. It's a fictional story, but it's a real scenario.
I believe the message of Gray State is not a documentary, but it's also not a fiction film. It's in this weird zone where it's based off of fact, but it hasn't happened yet.
The movie, as I understand it, it's kind of a dystopian near future kind of thing. It's kind of like 1984.
I like that.
But I don't really know anything else about it at all.
It's sort of the government behind the government, the power behind the power. There's sort of an Orwellian element to it.
I see it as a very real possibility, and in the last few years, it's becoming even more realistic. I mean, you're seeing the potential complete collapse of America, of a global economy. We're seeing the Orwellian nightmare unfold. We're seeing this mass surveillance society.
I think it's very realistic that we could live in a dystopian society where dissent is legal.
I mean, you think about Orwell, something like 1984 or even Animal Farm, something like that. He wasn't just imagining this stuff. I mean, this was really going on. We know in our history that this kind of thing, at least on some scale, is possible to do.
It's really going to sneak up on you. There's going to be a lot of normal, everyday things that you're going to recognize. You're going to be able to see that it doesn't take much to turn it from being what we're used to in the suburbs to people lining up outside of Walmart demanding food. The fact that Gray State talks about the federal government being in charge of food distribution is probably the most realistic thing about it.
I think one of the scariest things about Gray State is it doesn't take much of a stretch of the imagination to make the entire scenario plausible.
Twisting the normalcy, if you will, of everyday life into something that's really ugly is going to be the most interesting part of this movie.
We've seen other countries, modern countries, they have electricity and running water and all these other conveniences. We've seen them fall into and become brutal dictatorships.
I think it could very well come to that based on the things that are happening in the news, and we're seeing, the collapse of our economy, so many different things happening.
They have paved roads, they have running water, they have electricity, they have cable TV. So what is it that keeps it from happening in the United States?
COVID. It's so crazy to watch this because you think like this could have been put out in 2023, 2022, 2024. Here it is, 2012, filmed in probably 2011.
Being Americans, we have a lot of freedoms. And what if those freedoms are taken away?
Gray State portrays one potential future for American society, and I saw this and wanted to think, well, that's just one of many possibilities, but it's scary to think how we're already halfway there. We're already at the light gray state, and it's all shades of gray.
If you really want to wake up and realize what's going on in your world today, take examples out of Gray State and go Google search some terms. Google search FEMA camps, Google search Agenda 21, martial law, and don't just look at the first link. Look at the .gov website link and really read and spend some time researching. Anyone that does will be quite shocked and amazed at what they find.
I think one of the first things they need to do is just look at history, look at the history of the United States and the history of the world, and acknowledge that things like this can happen, things like this have happened, things like this are happening right now.
Things that we would have never believed just a few years ago are now reality.
There's Alex Jones. It's so interesting and so crazy when you think about all of these things that are happening, that was happening, and what we all went through, the world life-changing thing. It's okay. The world life-changing thing that happened in 2020. And like I was saying, like listening to some of this, watching some of this, this could have been made in 2022, 2020, 2023, 2024. It's pretty interesting. I enjoy going back and looking at David's videos, and some of it I just cut up, and just to have it all in just one big long clip is kind of nice too. But it's pretty interesting to go back and look at all of these things, because we don't hear a lot about this David. We hear a lot about this crazy David, this drug addict, this domestic abuser, this person who snapped, who was unhinged. We don't see a lot of evidence of that. But going back and listening and watching him and looking at how he talks to people, the mannerisms, things that he's been through, and so I understand. It must have taken Eric Nelson a lot of work, to piece together a hit piece on David, and I think they spent a lot of time on this hit piece, and a lot of things were cut out. A lot of things could not make it in because it did not make David look crazy. They took the few things that they thought made him look crazy and tried to focus on that, tried to highlight on that.
Exactly. And, to bring up the part where especially they try to always talk about, his supposed drug use. Now, we do know, according to his Day One journal, he was smoking a lot of pot during that one summer, the last summer, and he had tried shrooms. But also in his Day One journal, he says he didn't like what it did to him. He had just started, he said the first time he smoked pot, he was 28, but he didn't like what it was doing to him. So he and Kamel had made a promise that they were going to stop doing it because it was not helping him, in the long run. And we do know, according to the toxicology reports, they both had clean drug screens. So clearly he wasn't a drug addict and had nothing to do with, smoking pot at all. But like you said, the hit piece they did, it made it sound like that, he was out of his head. He snapped because he was doing shrooms or smoking pot. And the evidence doesn't point to that at all.
And it was a very strange film too. It was a very strange thing that they actually wanted me and Dan Hinnon in that film for some reason. And I still don't know why. And I don't know who else they asked. Did they ask Alex Jones? Did they ask Mark Dice? Did they ask Adam Cokehead? Did they ask a lot of these other people to see if they would give some comment on David? Because they were with David, right? They were there. And but I quickly understood what our role in that film was to be. It was to be the two crazy conspiracy theorists. And then at the same time, guess what they're labeling David as? A crazy conspiracy theorist. And even everything that they did, all the stuff that they asked me it wasn't about David. It wasn't about that. It was a lot about Sean Wright. It was a lot about the stuff that we posted online that everybody can see, that everybody, and what I was trying to get back to with them was the bullet in these ceilings. They didn't want to talk about was, just these simple things of what proves David Crowley guilty. And a documentary based on that would be great and can be great. And hopefully one day will be great. And that's a documentary that needs to be made that really examines what proves David Crowley guilty and what proves him innocent. And if a documentary could just focus there, I think it would be a very, very powerful, something very powerful that this world needs, that this country needs, because what happened to David could happen to a lot of people. And it may have, just because David was, because we know about the gray state and everything like that. We don't know if something similar has happened with people who may not be as popular as David Crowley.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring up like you and Dan being in their little movie thing. All I know is when I watched it, and I had never even met you guys yet, had never even talked to you at that point. But when I watched the Netflix thing, how they portrayed you two and how they had you two come across on the film wasn't just the fact that they were trying to make you crazy, but they were trying to say, okay, see, we have both sides here. We have our side, which we know is right because of look at all the research we did, which they didn't do any. And then look at these two who are just going to say, he's innocent because, like you said, they're conspiracy theorists. And so they're going to automatically believe he's innocent. And in fact, I know that's how it felt like it came across. But at the end of the day, after it was all done, I know I've talked to a lot of people who, after watching that sloppymentary. I think you came up with the perfect coin term. It was perfect. That they all saw you and Dan as the only two who were being honest. The rest of everybody else was just lying. And it was clear they were lying.
Yeah, I have heard that a lot too.
Mhm.
I got another little clip I want to play here. This one, this is about 4 minutes. Hopefully it doesn't get a copyright
No wonder
strike.
it was catnip for conspiracy theorists.
Hello, this is Dan Hennon, along with Greg Fernandez Jr. for another installment of the Crowley Case Updates. Today is June 4th, 2016, and we've got some updates on the case. So how are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing good. It's hot, but that's okay.
Good.
I don't give a crap about credibility at all. Credibility means nothing to me. What I care about is truth.
I'm not in law enforcement. I don't have a background in detective work, but how it happened, I would say it's undetermined. You've got no suicide note. There's no motive. And they said that out of their way to say that the blood test on the wall written Allah Akbar was the blood of Comel Crowley.
Right.
Well, who wrote the blood? Once you get into this wrong territory, once you start treading into these waters, there is a backlash against you by some shadow entity, who knows what it is, but you start pushing the wrong buttons to the elite, so to say, and there is payback.
And this was probably the best publicity that the group got. I think we weren't, I don't even know if we were at 1,000 members at this point, and it jumped up to about 3,000 not too long after this film came out, after the Netflix version came out, because there were a few versions, as we all know. But they couldn't even get my my city right. They said I was in Hayward, California. I'm in Castro Valley, California, and they were there. But that's okay. I got no problem with that. Maybe they were helping protect my identity.
And I think one of the big problems with the people who think that David Crowley is guilty is they don't even want us asking questions now. They don't decide when we get to stop asking questions. We get to decide that.
There were two parts where they interviewed me, and so one is where what you saw there was Dan Hennon and I going back doing a live show. We did that after they interviewed me for about one hour. And so the first part where you see where the fly is in the back and you see that's me sitting down, and they interviewed me for that hour, and you could see how much of that hour they use, about 30 seconds of it. So there is a lot of footage that they have. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on some of that footage for that. And I kick myself for not recording it myself, recording what they were recording there too. But it was a very, very strange day. And I was so naive to what was going on. My wife caught on pretty early too, because I was going to do it at my house, and she refused. I ended up doing it at my mom's house, and that's where this happened. And we did it in the backyard because the lighting in the house was so bad. That's why it's in the backyard there. And we had to stop a lot of times because there were planes flying overhead. But so when you see me sitting there, and it's just me talking to the camera, that was them actually interviewing me, and then the rest of the time it's me and Dan Hennon doing another hour. So after the hour that they asked me all these questions, then Dan Hennon and I spent another hour on a live show, and they sat there for the whole hour. We thought they were going to be there for 5-10 minutes, and if you go back and watch the live show that Dan Hennon and I did, you can see the big camera, a huge camera in the back of my screen and in the back of his. Dan Hennon and I did not both plan on wearing plaid that day either, but it just kind of worked out like that. There's only a few more minutes of this, and then we'll get back to it. But this is really the part that I wanted to play.
Did the government want to silence him and his film?
Guys out here going after the truth get knocked off.
See, that's Dabu 7, and I know a lot of people may like Dabu 7, but that's what that guy does. It's speculation, and it really destroys what we were trying to do. And he was doing this before us. So, but then you can see he's not covering it. He's not looking at the documents. And this is what happens with these guys who have a lot of followers online and everything. And, but it's all sensationalism. They don't just deal in the facts here. They don't just talk about what do we know about this case. They don't approach it like a journalist, and that's fine, because that's not their job, right? That's them. If that's their thing, then do your thing.
This particular video really shows why the criminal establishment murdered not only him, but his family as well.
As the admin and creator of the justice pages on the Facebook accounts, I allow all theories to come into play. I don't want to censor narratives. There are certain people out there that certainly believe that these things did happen. They ruled it a double murder followed by a suicide at the hands of David without any real investigation. There was no signs of domestic violence. There was no evidence of a violent household. There was no evidence of PTSD. There was no evidence of mental illness, no depression, nothing.
And he asked if I was sitting down. He says, David. And then I was like, oh. And then he goes, Kamel. And I was like, oh. And Ronnie. And I just, I've never been stabbed, but it felt like something was going into my stomach with each name. And I couldn't breathe. And I just thought, this is like scripted almost.
Look, there it is, right there. This is like scripted almost. Staged, scripted, whatever you want to call it. That's some of the best evidence that I've found, that the family knows there's something up here, man. Something wrong. What do you think?
Well, just watching Dan Jr.'s body language, and you watch his face as he's talking, and you look at his micro expressions, the dude's lying out his ass.
Does he seem happy to be on camera?
He looks a little too excited to be talking. Yeah, to be like the center of attention. And what he's, I think the only part where he was saying was true was, yeah, it's scripted. Absolutely scripted. It's him, and it's Danny, and it's Sean, and those were the people that led me to start digging, because when you watch how they respond and how they talk, they're lying.
Yeah, it was about two hours that they spent with me, and we see what they get. That's okay.
Apple Valley Police recently closed their exhaustive...
This is another interesting thing, because with Tom Lydon, a lot of it focused on Tom Lydon. The only time that you see the police in this whole Eric Nelson's sloppumentary film is just footage from Tom Lydon. It's secondary footage there. It's not like Eric Nelson went and actually interviewed these detectives, the investigators. I always wondered why. Why did they just use Tom Lydon's footage? And I'm pretty sure that the investigators knew if they would have spoken directly with Eric Nelson, that would have opened up the door. They would have had to have spoken with us too.
Investigation. And for the first time are sharing their findings with the Fox 9 investigators.
And that's 2016.
It looks like David
This is.
Snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter, and then ultimately himself.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
In her blood?
Yes.
And this goes back with another thing where they just say that. I don't know. I hope the audio's coming in okay for everybody when I play that. But yeah, who wrote Allahu Akbar on the wall? And he's like, David did. And you can look at the documents. There is no evidence that David did that. They found no latent prints. They did not find David's DNA on that wall. How do they just come out and say that it's David Crowley who wrote that? They have proof that it's Kamel's blood, because the DNA shows that. That's pretty clear, I think. But what proves that David Crowley did this? And Tom Lydon doesn't follow up on that.
Yeah, and the first thing that they should have thought of, even the police, is if he had written that, his DNA would have been all over. It would have been mixed DNA, his in with hers, because as you're, pushing on the wall, you're leaving your DNA, the skin, the oil, and everything mixed in with the blood. It would have been mixed, but it wasn't. It was just hers. So their theories fall apart. And when you watch Chief, I can never pronounce his name, so I'll call him Chief R.
Right.
Right, Skull.
I just say it fast.
There you go.
Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire. When he first starts talking and he's like going, and he snapped. Now, this is what I'm talking about when you watch not only his micro expressions, but how his body language is. He's shaking his head no. He's like, so he's not believing what he's saying. So his words are not matching his body language. And when you start paying attention and when he says something he wants you to believe, the eyes get wider and, oh, he did, right? Who did it? He did, just a little bit. And it's like, oh, dude. And I can see why they probably weren't going to be interviewed or talk to anybody. They give it away. Their body gives away the truth.
Interesting. Well, now I want to go back and
go back and watch.
Here.
Just looks like David.
See?
His head is shaking no. I never noticed that.
Yep, he's shaking no. He doesn't believe it.
Wow.
You got to watch all these things. And I'm telling you, this is when you start putting all of this together.
Yeah.
Everything falls apart.
I never noticed his head. He did it. He did it. And
yep.
I gotta see that again.
Yeah, watch it again.
Gotta watch that. Let me go back a few minutes here. I'll go back about here.
Timers sharing their findings with the Fox 9 investigators.
It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter, and then ultimately himself.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
In her blood?
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe that was just kind of a parting shot.
Yep. See?
Parting shot.
And he doesn't believe it. See how he's shaking his head?
Yeah. It's just a parting shot. Wow.
A parting
David
shot at
Crowley
what?
seemed like he was very specific in how he wanted to be perceived to the outside world. It was almost like David gave us this plot twist at the end.
It was almost like
Allah
it.
Akbar.
See his eyebrows raised?
Plot twisted.
Guess who's actually on the other side of this camera with Tom Lydon?
Is it Sean?
It sure is.
Oh, gee.
And probably Mason Hendricks.
Oh.
Wasn't going to have any resolution, but that people would continue talking about.
Cat lover.
Who walks into a house and sees Allah Akbar written on the wall and goes, oh yeah, David Crowley, someone who is not a Muslim, all of a sudden now he's writing it, and that somehow proves that he's guilty?
David Crowley would not write Allah Akbar in his wife's blood on the wall and leave a Quran open. He never brought up that issue once.
This is a good one. I love seeing, this is the very rare footage. I would love to see all of this footage that they have here from this service. And you can see, I don't think my cursor shows up here, but you can see behind this lady's head, David's brother and his attitude. He's pretty happy. Anyways, let me go back. So that was pretty interesting, but I would love to get some of that footage there and some of the screenshots. I mean, Eric, like I said, Eric Nelson had all this footage, and we were told it was going to solve everything. He was going to lay the case to rest. And I think when that didn't happen, it really split the Gray State Goons into different factions and really created some problem, some chaos for them.
Mm-hmm.
Rick says, how did they sell this interview to you, Greg? We are digging for the truth. You will be able to show your evidence, give your thoughts. Yeah, basically that they wanted to hear our side, and they wanted to, solve the case. So they wanted to hear everybody's side, and we were told we were going to, be given a fair chance. When I talked to Mason Hendricks, because after I had filmed the footage, Mason Hendricks and I think we began actually communicating after it. I could be wrong on that. I have to check the dates. But anyways, Mason Hendricks told me that the film does not make you guys look bad or look like crazy conspiracy theorists or anything like that. That it's very, very fair. And I don't know, everybody can be the judge of their own. I could take a couple clips and, I can see, I don't know, it's not too bad. It's not that bad, but I don't know if it was worth it, or if not. At that time, I felt like it was a good opportunity to be a part of it. And if they're going to slander you, they're going to slander you. And the contract, I may still have the contract or a copy of it, because I did send it to some family members to see about the contract that they wanted me to sign. The contract that Kamel's family did not sign, and that's why their footage was taken out of Eric Nelson's film. One of the reasons, I guess, why he couldn't use any of their footage. But I actually tweaked my contract and took out a big paragraph that was, about slandering people and things like that. So it's like, and you can see they didn't really use that much of my footage, but maybe that's because they could only use certain things. I don't know. I don't know what was in Eric Nelson's heart, why he even made that film, what the purpose was. We've heard many theories, many stories, but it's done nothing but really help our cause. And I hear people say that they watch that film and they think, oh, they see cases solved, boom, done. But I don't really believe them. I don't believe them. I don't believe that they believe it in their heart. And it really, and that really opens up the door to say, well, okay, that's their side. Let's look at the other side here. Let's look at the possibility that David didn't do this, and here's why. And this is why when you have people that go off on the far end and just kind of, the government did it, this or that, and they have it all figured out, right? But some of those people are the same people that are not going to give you facts, that are not going to actually break it down for you why David didn't do it based on what the documents say, right? It's based on feelings. So I don't know. Just got to be careful with some of that, I think, anyways. I know I've missed a lot of comments. I'm really sorry about that. We all have a script. Let's feed off that and make a movie. I would love to see somebody take this film or take David's vision and do something with it. What are the copyright rules? What are the copyright laws for it? What can be done? Could we make a movie about a filmmaker who was accused of killing his wife and his child, and pretty much lay it out the way that the facts show us, but have it really be involved with the fictional film, almost a film within a film? There's a lot of different ways that you could do, a lot of different things that you could do. But what are your thoughts, Catherine, on going forward with the film?
Well, I mean, I agree. I agree with that. And I agree, because Stephen was saying earlier too, something similar to that we really need to get it out there and get all of our points put all together within, a same type of, film, documentary, something like that. And I think we should. There's just so much. And I want to jump back to part of what you were talking about, like with this sloppumentary. It's clear that they were trying to make David look like the crazy one who snapped. But it is also extremely clear that it had the exact opposite effect they were hoping, because more people it's like the majority of people who watch it end up going, wait a second, this isn't right. And they end up either coming to the group or leaving comments on videos or comments in the group. Then there are those who watch it and go, oh yeah, he's guilty. I mean, there are those who do that, but those are the people who haven't read anything and refuse to read and only go by what those people said. But I know for me personally, it had the it actually flipped me because I thought I had zero knowledge of the case whatsoever. And I just thought maybe you guys, like I said, I've said this a million times, you guys probably just didn't understand the medical jargon. So I'll help you along. And I watched that. And then I'm like, wait a second, there's something wrong here. Yeah, I need to look into this. Clearly this guy didn't do it. The family, what convinced me was Dan Sr.'s reaction when he was reading that little portion that they had. And then once I saw his reaction to that, I'm like, that man doesn't believe for 1 second his son did this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful clip. I don't know. I could probably find it and play it here. I have it on a different channel, but that is a very powerful one because he's, like you said, he's literally reading from a script. They're not hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
But yet some people who want to believe David did this, they're like, oh, the dad believes this. How dare you question the dad? Why? No, we're questioning if the dad is even questioning what he's reading because it doesn't seem like he believes it.
Yeah. Again, when you start to look at how he's responding, how his body reacts to the words he's saying, he's upset. He's almost in tears reading that. And he just is like going, I can't believe I have to say this about my son. That was my take on it. And I'm like, okay, if this guy doesn't believe his son did it, and you and Dan made far more sense in that little tiny bit that you guys had and all of the other guys, it's just watching what they were saying, watching how they're responding. And I'm like going, lie, 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 lie. What are these? And then, it totally flipped me from thinking David was probably guilty to, no, this is an innocent man who was framed.
I agree. I'm trying to see if I can actually find that clip.
Yeah, I think it was right at the end of that whole movie thingy is where it was one of their parting shots. And it was just like, it just broke my heart.
But I do have it here somewhere on a different channel. Let me see.
So the clips you're showing right now, it's not the whole movie, it's just parts that you took aside?
Yeah, it was short clip. Okay, I found it.
Okay.
I found it. Well, this is more of it's more of the paranormal things that he was saying.
If I remember correctly, it was right at the end of the sloppumentary, and I'm pretty sure they used Dan Sr., what he was saying, like the closing piece of it all. And it was like, wow, that was cruel.
Yeah, I found something. I don't know if this is going to have it, but this is it's labeled paranormal activity. I don't know if this is it, but this is him. This at least shows him talking about it or reading from a script. I don't know if this is it or not.
October 30th, 2014, there was a journal entry. It said, Kamel got raptured today. Period. She's still here.
It was hard to hear when I first listened because there's some background noise in the room. I didn't realize there was anything on here. What is it?
I just told you. I just told you.
What is it?
I heard you.
Of course you have. We're decided.
You don't understand. But you were. Thank you for loving me.
Of course.
I found her too. I heard her cry. I want you. Please come with me.
there's another recording here of David right after this vision happened, of going into a room and trying to explain right away what Kamel had said and what it was hard to hear when I first listened because there was some background noise in the room. I didn't realize there was anything on here.
1:48 p.m. 30 October 2014. I was just getting back from Home Depot with a bunch of wood to build the compost bin. Had lunch with Coma, and suddenly she began to shake and weep and howl, as if like someone had died. And she sat down. She said,
Yes, I don't think that
rapture is.
I don't think that one has exactly what we are looking for, but you can. There's at least one part of it where it shows that he's reading from a script, which is, I mean, but yeah. If anybody has seen, if for any reason, if you want to go and see that film, the paranormal stuff is really some of the strangest things to me too. It really. All that stuff was just very, very strange.
And but it could be explained in so many different ways. My personal belief, and after talking to several people and doing all the reading and then doing background research on, all of them, everybody involved, I do think that this was more like, what do they call that? Voice to skull type thing. I think that they were screwing with her and she didn't know. She probably didn't know these kinds of things existed. And they put all of these thoughts into her head. And like you were saying, it's like this was all planned in advance. So when this is happening in October, and they all pretty much had their fights by then, and these two, David and Kamel, had, pretty much separated themselves. And now all of a sudden, she's having these paranormal experiences when it's so easy to put things, into people's minds nowadays, that I think, again, I honestly believe that they were just messing with her and they were doing some pretty cruel experiments.
Yeah. That's
Their next door neighbor had assumed they were on a
about
long
as
holiday.
cruel
He'd even cleared
as it gets, I think, for them to do something like that. And I also wonder if they were doing that because she did believe in that stuff. So maybe they're feeding into whatever she has been involved in or researched. I've talked to Kamel's sister. They are very familiar with jinn, which just means demon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Pakistan, apparently that's, I wouldn't say it's normal or whatever, but they're not. It's not a taboo topic where if you talk about it, then you're crazy, right? That's and as a Christian, for any Christian that has read the Bible, there's jinn in there too. There's demons in there too. You can see all of that. Jesus is casting out demons, putting them into swine, and so all that stuff for a lot of us is real. And maybe they were hoping they could use that to not only prove that they thought David was crazy, but that Kamel went crazy. And when I talked with Kamel's sister, that's what it really sounded like. That's why they wanted their footage taken out of that film, because they felt like Eric Nelson was trying to make Kamel look crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Have another source that has said that David's dad strongly believes that they were both involved in this. They both wanted to kill themselves and kill their daughter. And so when you have things like that, if someone can push them and question them on that, then now we're not talking about a double murder suicide either. And there's so many angles to this, because now they're talking about a double suicide and a murder. It's completely different. And it just goes back to the official theory is garbage. No matter how you slice it up, no matter what you say, the official theory is garbage and cannot be proven. And I've seen people go ahead.
In the evidence itself proves that their theory of a double suicide murder, the evidence doesn't fit that whatsoever. It just doesn't, especially when you see their different times of deaths and Kamel being the last one. And then how her blood is everywhere, but David's and Rania's is missing from the scene. I mean, none of it makes sense. So it can't be that. Absolutely can't be. So if that is what Dan Sr. is thinking, then he should feel rest assured that's not it at all. But when you have these men who work with David and they know how to add sound to a room and they know how to place microphones or speakers or whatever, and then start messing with somebody, like when Kamel first said she heard in this really deep voice, it would be so easy to do that to somebody. And especially if they believe in the spirits like that, I do. I believe in spirits. So it would be, somebody could do something like that. And I may have to think twice going, wait a second, is this really a spirit or is this somebody messing with me?
Right.
But yeah. And then it just all fits with the plan because it seems like this crime, like you had stated earlier, it was planned out. It was horribly executed because it's the worst crime scene I've ever seen. But yet it seems like it has elements of planning, advanced planning. So yeah, do this. So now we can say, oh, look, she was crazy. She was hearing things. But do you see where he's like, how he's talking about his wife there? It's with love. It's with concern. It's like a very tender toward this woman who is having like a nervous breakdown at that point because of what somebody is doing to her. And he has nothing but compassion for his wife. A man, where's all this craziness? Where's all this hatred, this snapping that he does? It's nowhere to be found.
Mm-mm. And they had all the footage. So if it was there, they should have been the ones to bring that out. If they're hiding it, well, that's on them. That's a whole nother issue. I'm going to play a few more minutes of this. Are you okay? Can you hang on for? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
right.
good. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. This is some of the early news days here, and I'll be right back.
Their next-door neighbor had assumed they were on a long holiday. He'd even cleared the drive twice with a snowblower. But when he spotted unopened Christmas gifts this week, he peeked in the window.
We received a call from a neighbor that they had seen bodies inside the house, so our police department went.
The neighbor, who says police asked him not to go on camera, says through the window he found David Crowley, a local filmmaker listed as a veteran. Nearby, his wife Kamel and their 5-year-old little girl.
And we just kind of figured that they had taken off and gone away for the holidays.
This white Rambler sat quiet for weeks with such little activity. The next-door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
I looked and there was a gun on the floor.
And I saw like a heap of things, and then I noticed a human hand.
The neighbors tell us they found the bodies of the father,
David Crowley,
his wife Kamel Crowley, a self-employed dietitian, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Apple Valley police call it an apparent murder-suicide. Neighbors knew little of the family except for David Crowley's screenwriting ambitions.
And he made a movie called Gray State, and it was about the militarization of the government.
2 years ago, Crowley, a military veteran, publicized the yet-to-be-released film on this internet program.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having us on. Yeah, definitely the Gray State is something that we can turn around and look at, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden from neighbors, a tragic ending that may never be understood.
Shock.
That
you have something that happens like that next door, and you don't really know when it happened?
Grim details are emerging from an apparent murder-suicide in Apple Valley, Minnesota today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christy Larson. A neighbor discovered the bodies of a 5-year-old girl and her parents inside their home. The family had presumably been dead for weeks. Lindsay Savard has the report.
And we just kind of figured that they had taken off and gone away for the holidays.
This white rambler sat quiet for weeks with such little activity. The next door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
I looked and there was a gun on the floor.
And I saw like a heap of things, and then I noticed a human hand.
The neighbors tell us they found the bodies of the father,
David Crowley,
his wife, Kamel Crowley, a self-employed dietitian, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Apple Valley police call it an apparent murder-suicide. Neighbors knew little of the family except for David Crowley's screenwriting ambition.
And he made a movie called Gray's Date, and it was about the militarization of the government.
2 years ago, Crowley, a military veteran, publicized the yet-to-be-released film on this internet program.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having us on. Yeah, definitely the Gray State is something that we can turn around and look at, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden from neighbors, a tragic ending that may never be understood.
Shock.
Shock.
That you have something that happens like that next door, and you don't really know when it happened.
David Crowley's Instagram account shows him posing with numerous guns. Neighbors had also seen guns in his garage, but didn't know if they were real or if they were props from his movie.
4933 Sam 14 for suspicion, 1055 Ramsdale Drive. Cop reporting suspicious behavior next door. Went over to the home to the right of the RP, sees dead bodies inside the house, dog inside, sees a gun in the house on the floor.
Friends and neighbors bring flowers to the door of the Apple Valley home, where a family had laid dead for weeks.
There's Tom Lydon again. This is probably his first little clip here.
Police will say is that the couple, David and Kamel Crowley, and their 5-year-old daughter died from gunshots in a murder-suicide. Bring flowers to the door of the Apple Valley.
Interesting that they were bringing things, and who are these people that are bringing stuff there? And so early on the 21st here, and leaving things at the door.
Home, where a family had laid dead for weeks. All police will say is that the couple, David and Kamel Crowley, and their 5-year-old daughter died from gunshots in a murder-suicide. When police arrived Saturday afternoon.
So he's saying that's all that they will say, but that's not true. That's not all that they say. I mean, some of the inconsistencies from these early videos are pretty interesting.
Only the family dog was still alive. David was a military veteran and aspiring filmmaker, the director of this slick trailer for a movie project called Gray State. The plot line had America turning into a tyrannical police state. For 3 years, he'd been trying to sell the film concept to a Hollywood studio, and recently told friends he was on the verge of a $30 million deal.
And this is with no budget. We've already passed a lot of local films on Facebook in popularity, and we're in hibernation.
The Gray State Project had attracted the attention of libertarian conservatives. This was Crowley speaking at a Ron Paul event 3 years ago.
No Hollywood studio will touch the Gray State Project due to its contentious nature. That is why we need your help to get this film financed and seen in theaters.
The grisly nature of the Crowley's death led to headlines on People magazine and British tabloids. And on social media, plenty of conspiracy theories too. Even a Facebook page called Justice for David Crowley, with people saying they don't buy the official story, suggesting the Crowleys were murdered by special ops because the anti-government theme of his movie.
So I guess we all thought that this was a special ops hit, and you can see how they can't even get it right. They show the page, which is different than the group, but they don't they have a hard time differentiating the group and the page, which is fine. They have a hard time differentiating a lot of different things, I guess. But that was probably one of Tom Lighton's earliest videos there, and you can see where he's going with it. But it's interesting that he says that all the police will say is this, and that's not true, because the press reports, the press releases clearly say a double murder suicide. They're already saying that before the 21st. So I don't know.
Well, and if you notice too, that female reporter, when you look at the backdrop of when she starts talking about the case, it's of a gun, right? So they're already setting the subliminal thoughts into people's heads that he's guilty. And that is all done purposefully. Those backdrops, everything they do is all done with thought and purpose. So it's like, I mean, from the get-go, from moment one, they were setting him up to be a killer. And I don't know. It's like, I'm going to have to start paying attention to the news to see if they do that to everybody.
And they mention the UK Daily. They mention how this got worldwide press, really, which is pretty interesting too. How deep and how far this thing went. It's almost as if that was a part of the script too. And I've always kind of felt like that this whole thing is just staged in such a weird way. It doesn't mean that David Crowley was part of the staging, but part of the staging could have been to make sure that you and I are talking about this 9 years later. We can't discount that either. And but either way you look at it, it does seem like a big gray stage to me. Hey, Mary. I'm sure I've missed a couple people. Planet X is also there too. Mary Holt and glad Muzzle. Glad you're still here. Crip Rick is still here. And thanks everyone. Eric Rise of the New World Order is still here. Ellie's still here. So Butterfly Kisses didn't say hi to you there either. But we're just going through this. Ray, there's another person. Ray, Aline, I know they've been talking about going back and forth on a different movie. And I forget what movie that was, but there's this new movie that apparently came out that is, pretty almost like the Police State, another Police State movie. So, but hey, I'd love to see somebody do something with this, with David Crowley, with the Gray State. And I was talking with, we did a show with Blues News and with Christian Coffins and Noah, and we're talking about what's stopping us from at least making some David Crowley t-shirts or something like that, doing some of that marketing to kind of just anything that we can do to keep the case going. And there's a difference when you say, you want people to follow what you think is right? And then just to say that the goal is to just spread the word about this case almost. And I've kind of always felt like that and kind of held back a lot of my personal views and a lot of my theories about what may have happened or may have not happened about it. Because it's really, for me, I think even 9 years later, it's still kind of like that. And I think that frustrates some people that have moved way beyond level 1. And they see me, I'm still here at level 1 here, just trying to get more people involved in the case. And people are at level 5 looking back at me like, dude, where are you? Come on, come this way or come that way. And I'm like, I just go where God tells me to go, man. I don't want to act like I have everything all figured out. And at the same time, I don't want to just, like Dan Hinna was saying in that one clip, we allow all views and all theories and everything. And I think that's the best way to really go. I wanted to ask you, and I know we don't really talk about this a lot. We probably very rarely talk about it, only when we joke about it with my fan club and everything. But there was the hater group that had kind of disbanded, at least publicly, from Facebook. And I believe that Sophia was the one who, was like, they're gone pretty much. They're no longer here. And to me, it was kind of like that was a good thing. That was a good thing. And that was a smart thing on their part. I thought they should have done that a long time ago. But I thought it was a very smart move on their part to either to disband because they know that they're full of crap, or because they realize, hey, you guys are you're picking up where Eric Nelson left off. You're helping these people. You're helping them. Any thoughts on the hater group that has disbanded?
Well, I wonder if because I never really give anybody in a legal field much credence. If they speak, it's like, if I see action, then I'll believe you. But if you're talking, it's just like wind is escaping your lips. And when the city attorney said that they were going to look into the fake document, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm wondering because we had all the proof where that document came from. So I'm wondering if that really had something to do with it, because their site was filled with nothing but, bullying, making fun of, spewing all these lies, talking out of both sides of their faces. And then when the legal issue, because that is a massive crime. So I'm beginning to wonder if they really thought long and hard about it and said, maybe we should just kind of walk away from this because of what we did, and I hope that's why.
Yep. And that goes back to this document here, I believe, is the one that you're talking about, where they pretty much say, and this comes directly from really from the lawyers, I guess, right?
The city attorney.
Yep. City attorney. Yeah. And so based on this, seems pretty, Apple Valley City Attorney Christine Caselius. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I don't know why they address this to me either. I did request things, but I think that Sophia was the only one who brought the fraudulent document to their attention. Maybe I did. I don't remember that I did that, but I got the same exact notification that Sophia did. I think she was the one that brought it to their attention. I don't believe that I did.
Well, I definitely know that she did take it.
I know she did. Yeah, I know she did. And she would have done it first, but I don't know. It's been so long, so long ago. But there is that fake document. So we documented the documents of the fake document. And so that is it. But that all leads back to Tony Floyd. And I always thought, if I was ever going to do a what's that guy's name? What's the Floyd name? The guy from Minnesota.
Oh, Jeepers, see?
I don't even
George.
know. George, yeah. I always thought that was a key word, that this guy is somebody in Minnesota somewhere. And toe and knee.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty interesting because they clearly received photos we were not allowed to have, speaking of the autopsy and the clothes and stuff. And I have requested those so many times and I was told flat out no. And then Tony, who goes by Richard, who goes by whatever is this person, she has had several names, but they clearly had photos we were denied. And then all of a sudden now they're shutting everybody down. So
do you think Tony Floyd had a big part in shutting down the hater group? at least publicly.
I think because that person, we don't know, male, female, because Tony could be, a totally fake name.
Could be.
I think that side knew that this person had the goods on them. And I believe that they had stuff they hadn't even shared with us, even though they put a lot of it online. I don't think they put everything. And I think the other side said, oops, we finally we trusted the wrong person, and now they're turning on us.
Yeah, and as far as the actual document or the affidavit with the T from Detective Shane Colcanos, however you want to say it, this was another shocker, because this is like, wow, an affidavit really relating to something that has been spread out there. And I wonder how many people would it take for the Apple Valley or for the for these authorities to respond to this in this way, to actually have a notary, and to just, and this is September 20th, 2021.
Yeah, that's when you know that the not only the city attorney but the police department, they're taking this extremely seriously, because how they faked Sean's document could have put him in some legal issues had this case been reopened, and which is not right, because this particular detective has been one of the few that I find has done honest work, and everything that this how you say his name, Shane, we'll call him Shane, he's been forthright and he did his job, and nothing he did seems like he's part of the cover up. So he's probably like going, you guys are not going to drag me through the mud. And yeah, so this was a serious step. They weren't messing around when they had him do the affidavit.
Yeah. And I do wonder if, I really hope not, but I hope that, they didn't think that the Justice for David Crowley and Family Group had anything to do with the fraudulent document. It sounds like, based on the city attorney, that they didn't, that they understood, hey, we're glad that you guys brought this to our attention. What ended up happening with this, as you well know, is we stopped getting documents. We're still owed documents. We're still owed things. And could that be part of it too? It's like you throw this wrench and all of a sudden now nobody's getting anything because we're looking into it. So this threw a big wrench. The Tony Floyd saga is really one of the, this is a whole book in itself here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything that happened, and to end with the with this hater group closing down shop, and think that it's going to end there. It's not going to end there, because we are promised these documents that we've now been waiting for 3 years now, patiently. And so that's,
if nothing else, at least send us what they sent the other group, and they clearly received things we were not allowed to have. And that's not right. And by getting that, if, by Tony, I'm still thinking it's a female.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a woman who is using a male name, but Tony, they were smart enough to keep the receipt. You know what I mean? They came with the paper trail, and they're like, oh yeah, so you guys are going to tick me off? Okay, I'm going to go give it to them now. And the give they did, and they had the entire and complete paper trail, which is what I really think sealed their fate, because it was obvious, they had the emails, they sent the copy of the emails. So, we could track all this stuff and then send it to them going, here you go. Here's this. You guys might want to look into it.
Yeah, which was very, very strange when it first got posted in the group. I actually blocked the person when it first got posted, because I thought it was going to redirect to a fake link that was going to, you know, create a virus, et cetera, because we have been getting a lot of that. We got a lot of these weird porno posts and these weird things, and it was all meant for Facebook to just kick us off. That's all that they wanted. Later on, Facebook has gotten a lot better about putting in those filters, so you can filter out those things, which Dan never wanted to really do. He just wanted people to be able to post, say whatever you want, and that's it. And unfortunately, you know, that opened up the floodgates for these spammers, these people who just wanted to get their own post flagged. They wanted to get the post flagged so that it could reflect negatively on the group and get the group flag. And at the very least, it would turn people from the group to say, I don't want to see this stuff. Well, I don't want to see it either, you know?
Right.
And there was a lot of stuff like that we didn't want to see. But what happened is, you know, this guy came along, or this person, whoever it is. I just call it a guy because, you know, Tony, I don't know too many women named Tony. Maybe there are. And we were able to pretty much screenshot all of the stuff that this person had put out. And this was on a GeoCities website. And for anyone who is familiar with website and how far back they go and et cetera, GeoCities is like really early on. We're talking like AOL, you know, days. We're talking like back when you would try to go online and you heard that sound where it sounded like a fax, right? Like a bad fax was playing or something. So Tony, this person posts this stuff and sends it to us, and sends us all of these things talking about this group, this hater group, and just is calling them out on all of this different stuff. What's crazy is the original site. This is why this is in a PDF version, because I knew this was going to happen. The original site got taken down. It got taken down at least two or three times. And but this is the one we're able to grab every screenshot, able to grab everything that was tied to it, so that we would have it. And you got the day one, and then all of a sudden, not too long after this, I think, is when we finally got a lot of other documents. We got the day one journal. We got some other things too, but the blacklight reports, because they could no longer say that they didn't have it. It's like, well, how do these people have it? And they didn't come out and say that all of these documents were fraudulent. They came out and said one document was fraudulent. How difficult would it have been for them to say, well, not only is this one document fraudulent, all these other ones are? To me, it shows that they are watching what the group is doing, what documents are being posted there, et cetera, et cetera. And if they find any fake documents, they should be able to post those out. If the photo of the gun was fake, why didn't they come out and say that that was fake either? If some of these other photos and videos that have been floated out there, the medical examiner photos, if any of those were fake, do you think they would have come out and said these are also fake documents? Why is it just the one document that they say is fake and nothing else? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, because that was the one where they actually listed his name, and I'm trying to remember what that document stated, but they had his name on that document, and they were cutting and pasting parts of his report and pasting it in. So the other ones, not necessarily would it, I mean, it's kind of clear they're not fake. I mean, I'm talking about like the medical examiner's reports and stuff like that. But that would be my best guess. But
there was something different about that one.
Oh, and they were using a specific detective and saying what was it? What was it that they said?
Yeah, I have them. But yeah, we have them both here. So what they did is they just added on to a real police document, and they added on fake stuff about David smoking weed and.
Yeah, they took the header and then typed in some other information and then signed his name
right
to that. And that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to find that because I know we have that where you can compare the one that is real and the one that is fake, and they look similar except for the last paragraph. Other than that, they look pretty similar.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, those are pretty much the only things that I had to cover here for this, unless you have anything else that you want to talk about. Um, what are your thoughts here? 9 years later, any other thoughts that we may want to look at?
Just that the more, the more documents they release, the more proof we have that the narrative is wrong. And I completely had forgotten about the Blacklight report. And on the Blacklight report, it states, because that's the one that lists the computer activity, websites visited, emails, all that other stuff. But this report also shows that that main computer was accessed on January 14th, 2015. Now, no matter how you slice it, the bodies in that house are dead by that point. So who accessed the family computer? And it had to be done manually. That's not an oops, something bumped, there was an earthquake or something fell and hit the laptop. No, somebody accessed the root drive, but they never look into it. And it's obvious parts of the journal were being erased. They don't look into that either.
Well, yeah, their timeline. If you read the 94 police page reports, right, the journal ends in one day. But when we get the day one journal, it ends in a different day, and then even some of the last journal entries look like they're almost like copied or pasted in there or something.
Yeah,
so
it's manipulated. And it's clear that somebody went in there on December 25th and was jacking with the day one journal. And so erasing things and adding things in, but they don't talk about that. It doesn't fit the narrative.
No, it doesn't fit the narrative at all. And so here we have the fraudulent document compared to the real document. So that is there if people want to see what does a real document say. This is the real document here, right? And so I think it's just this first paragraph, one of these first paragraphs there. Let me go here. So this is just one of the first paragraphs. This is the real document here. I know it's probably really small. And I believe it's just like at the very end or something where they're talking about stuff, but then all of a sudden it turns to weed. So I want to go to the fraudulent one to show what the fraudulent one says. And
see, it's as plain as day that it's been altered.
Yeah, first of all, it's not very good. It was a little clearer, I think, before we may have copied it, but this was kind of par for the case for that group, is that everything they did was kind of blurry, kind of out of focus, and just kind of made it look like, but I think this is it. So at the top here, this is something that was not meant to be added, and it's it goes into a lot of things. I know people cannot read it, so I'll kind of read it for you, where it says, attaches the full examination report regarding 1051 Ramsdale Drive, Crowley family. As you can tell from the photos and journal entries, there was widespread drug use to include a plethora of illicit drugs, and the perpetrator, David Crowley, had not slept in many days. From the evidence we were able to obtain, we believe that he was using substances to remain awake, and the journal entries show him becoming increasingly agitated. Although we cannot say with 100% certainty what set the wheels in motion, we believe the actual incident occurred on either December 24th, 2014 or December 25th, 2014. and that the substances as well as sleep deprivation contributed. As discussed, our evidence coupled with BCA's co-investigation concur with your findings that the adult female was shot first from a short distance. The minor child was then shot at close range and placed near the adult. And see, that's another, and placed near the adult. So they're saying this fake document is saying David shot them both, but then he moved the daughter. He placed the daughter near the adult female, and at some point later, the male perpetrator turned the weapon on himself and discharged it, causing his subsequent death. We will be closing our case file to reflect the same. I'll let us know if we can be. Let us know if we can be of any further assistance. So you can clearly tell.
Which is, I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
But what's so funny is because Detective Klokanos, his job was computers, was going through the files on the computer. He wasn't doing the investigation of the death scene. And they're making it sound like he went and did the investigation of the death scene and came up with this entire scenario as to how it all happened. And that wasn't even his job. And it's hilarious. I mean, they screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah. They did that. Mary says the trash cans always have bothered me. If they died on the 24th or 25th, who took the cans to the street back because they were empty? Yeah. I don't know. And somebody, was there something in there that needed to be tossed out? It's the best way to toss it out. Unless you're collecting a souvenir, you want to get rid of everything, and you throw it in there. And maybe if they would have swabbed the garbage cans, maybe they would have found something. I don't know. At this point, it's all woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? We don't really know, but yeah, like she says, someone took the trash out in more ways than one,
And for me, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think that it's obvious they already celebrated Christmas. Like that little toy teapot thing that, that was sitting, that to me looked like that was one of Ranya's gifts, and it was all clearly opened. They had opened their cards, opened their gift cards. They had already celebrated the holiday.
Yeah.
And so it couldn't have been, the autopsies tell us it wasn't anyway, but it couldn't have been at Christmas or before Christmas. They had time. If nothing else, I'm grateful for the family, that they had one last Christmas together.
Yeah. Well, you can see that there were Christmas stockings on the kitchen island too. So nobody, they had the stockings out, and we know that David was seen on the, according to the neighbor, he was allegedly seen, I believe, on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or something. So, but they had the stockings already on the kitchen island. So that usually means, they're wrapping things up, right? And then people are like, well, there's no presents under the Christmas tree. Maybe they were poor and they couldn't afford any, so he decided, let's just all kill ourselves and everything. And they discount the $14,000 check that was right on the other side of that front door.
And they discount, in the journal, he talks about he was making $75 an hour doing a film job for somebody. And he's like, I'm so glad I can do this until they weren't poor by any means. And their bank account showed that they were not poor. They were fine.
That's it. All right, my friend, I think it's about time for me to hit the old dusty trail. And I know it's later where you are, so I really appreciate you joining me here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you everyone for joining. And you guys are the best. You're just the best.
Yep, we will definitely be back. Like I said, me and Dan Hinton are going to finish up the Gray Stage podcast next month, starting in February. But that doesn't mean that we're going to, stop doing videos here either. So we've done a few with Christian Coffins, with Woo's News. I'd love to get you on. I know Catherine, Woo's News wants to get a show, wants to do like a roundtable with a bunch of us talking about the Crowley case too. So I hope that we can make that happen too.
Yeah, it's like my schedule, like everybody else, it's been kind of crazy. My brother has been here with me since October because, you know, he's trying to get all of his military and VA stuff done. And it's just, the VA, it's a nightmare. It's been an absolute nightmare. But I think he's going to be heading back in about three to 4 weeks. So after he heads back, my schedule will open up tremendously.
Nice. Is that Russell or a different?
Yeah, Russell.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell him that I said hi and glad he's here, hanging out in the States for a little while. And
yeah, it's so hard because he's a great brother. He really, really is. He's a good brother. But I'm a huge introvert, and I don't like sharing my space with anybody for any amount of time. And so it's really, he has been so understanding. It's hard to describe, but I'm just
That's
like,
cool.
I pull back and it's like, you're in my space, back off. And I just want to go hide. And he's just like, okay, it's just you. Yeah,
It's just
it's
you.
just how you are. But yeah, but as soon as he goes back, I'll have a lot more time. After he leaves, I'm going to take a week or two. I have to just shut everything down and, you know, rebuild by being quiet and by myself. After that, I will be good to go.
That's good. All right, awesome. Yeah, well, good. Yeah, then we'll have we'll do some type of a roundtable, or maybe the next time we want to do a live thing, I'll just, you know, make sure I'll just send you the link, and if you can join, cool. If you can't, you know, we will definitely understand that. The soldier that served with David Crowley, Matthew, I want to get him back on too. So hopefully we can get him to kind of join back on, and yeah, and like I said, there's, you know, Woo's News has really kind of got me, you know, thinking about more things. He's asking me questions about the case, and he's doing some very interesting stuff on the January 6th case. For anyone that doesn't know, if you go to Woo's News on YouTube, and of course the first video that he did is banned, but there are a lot of videos up there too. But once he gets done with that, his focus will turn to the David Crowley case. So if anybody is curious about what type of a film he may be interested in making, go watch his J6 videos, and you'll get a pretty good idea of what he could possibly do for this David Crowley case. And then we'll go from there and see how we can, you know, just keep this case going. My goal is to just keep the case going, to make sure that the case does not die. You know, David Crowley died, his wife died, his daughter died, his mother died, which is another interesting one too. But they're gone, but they are not forgotten. And you know, even if David wasn't a soldier, you know, even if he wasn't who he was, a filmmaker, and didn't do all this stuff and all that, we have a 5-year-old child involved in this too, and that should hit every parent very, very hard. And being a new parent, you know, it hits me pretty hard, and I want to make sure that I take my personal thoughts and personal views out of it, especially more now that I am a parent, and to make sure that the focus is just on the case and not my, you know, my thoughts or my views or anything like that, or any, you know, emotions that I have when I look at my kids and I think, how could somebody do that to a child? And so it's been difficult, and this case can be very toxic. Before I had children, the case was toxic, and it can be even more toxic. And, you know, I hold my Bible tight and I keep Jesus Christ close, because if this is what he wants me to do, if he wants me to look into this and continue to, I'm definitely going to. I'm not going to be like Jonah, you know, so I'm just going to go with it. And at the same time, you know, I want to make sure that my the few things I've learned in journalism, are still there, still intact, to make sure people who have thoughts and views on this case, have a chance to say what they think, and that we can actually get to what the truth is. And the main thing for me is still to get the case reopened. I believe whatever we can do, and I think a documentary is really, really good. That can really help getting more documents, making sure people have access to the documents, things like that are, that's kind of where my focus is. And just taking that little break and kind of, trying to refocus and going back has really helped me too. And so, I'm not on Facebook, still not on Facebook. I'm not going back there. I don't know if I'm ever going back there, but I don't want to delete my Facebook account, only because I'm afraid if I do that, then all the documents and all the posts that I've done,
they'll be gone.
They'll be gone. So what I did is I didn't delete my Facebook account. I deactivated it. So that should make sure that anything that I posted or any of the documents are still there. But if anyone's wondering why I'm not responding on Facebook, it's just because I'm just not on Facebook right now. That's it. And I probably won't be until 2025. We'll see what happens in 2024, and maybe I'll be back. God bless you all. Thank you very much, Catherine. Tell your brother I said hi, and we will definitely be back here on this channel. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon.